Hello, everyone, and welcome to the season finale of the FW. Wow,
The FWW show? Can
yeah,
that be? Can that be what it is?
uh, uh,
That'd be a
Formula
wrestling
S,
show. That would be
SWW's Formula One.
that would be our wrestling show. I hope you realize would be the FWW Raw.
No, it would be WFW
WFW.
or WWF.
No, we can't do that one. There's a thing out there with the animals. There's a whole lawsuit about it. You might not have heard of it.
Well, no, that lawsuit only applies TV pro. Somebody called.
I thought it was pretty broad, is why they had to switch it.
Well, it was broad because WWE sells action figures and books and shirts, and so it was broad for.
Mm. Okay. But by the way, I'm Mike, and that's AJ. If we didn't catch that.
Well, we didn't catch it because
Hey, that's a good screw up. I appreciate the screw up.
yeah, so this is the year-end wrap-up. So we've got Turkey, the two Bahrain races, and then Snooze Fest that is Abu Dhabi. Yeah, and obviously news that happened since. Kicking off the news actually with a pretty big impact to Ferrari,
Okay.
and not just their F1 team. So their CEO, and who he was also a board member at Philip Morris cigarette company.
Mm-hmm.
He left his positions, both positions, due to COVID complications.
Wow.
He apparently had it and just wasn't recovering at a rate he thought was gonna allow him to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, well, I'll just leave.
On
And,
goodish terms.
Yeah, he'll leave on acceptable terms. Like, people understand.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's a pretty big deal because that, obviously, the CEO of Ferrari controls what Ferrari does, and with the budget cap starting for this next year, Ferrari was talking about going into IndyCar
Mm-hmm.
to basically keep. The idea was that they would go to IndyCar, and that would allow them to keep everybody on staff.
Because of how budgets would work, or
Yeah.
explain that.
Yeah, because their budget was considerably higher than what this cap is going to be set at.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of Ferrari laying off, 400 of the top engineers in the world, they were going to go into IndyCar, and that would allow them to, because IndyCar would be nothing to them.
Mm-hmm.
They have all the stuff they need in Maranello, so it would just be basically producing the cars and then shipping them to the States.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that kind of helped this possibility was Ferrari CEO was from the States.
Okay.
He was from New York. So they had a connection to the U.S. And obviously now that he's gone, that kind of shakes up
That
those
connection.
plans. That being said, Ferrari, whoever runs Ferrari's social media for the company, not the F1 team,
Mm-hmm.
is a pro at trolling.
Really?
Because about once a year, they'll post something like, "Oh, remembering Ferrari at
X.
uh yeah, X, Y, and Z, like at a track that they're not racing in that series." So it's kind of like, you know, but there are rumors that they would.
Huh.
So in the 50s, Enzo Ferrari designed a car to race at Indianapolis.
Okay.
And so Ferrari wrote up an article about remembering Ferrari at Indianapolis. And I was like, man, you guys are pretty good at this. So, but yeah, I guess we won't necessarily see how the new Ferrari CEO impacts anything
For a while.
until probably
What, 2 years?
February or March. Like,
Oh, you think it'd be immediate? Like,
well, in terms of what their plans are for if they're gonna go to IndyCar, if they're gonna go to um, Le Mans hypercar,
mm-hmm.
how are they going to keep those people around?
See, I just assumed it'd take a longer because there'd be plans in work or something.
No, I mean they can at least announce it, right? So
Hmm.
maybe you're not going to see that impact immediately, but come out and say, "Hey, we're doing a blank." I
Hmm.
don't see, excuse me, I don't see them doing. If they do IndyCar, it'll be 22 the first season,
Okay.
because unless they've been working on this
The
IndyCar
entire
for,
time.
yeah, for a year, they just wouldn't have the turnaround time to make.
That's why when you said that, I was in my head. I'm like, this had to be longer just because of that.
Yeah, I mean, uh, when they announced the budget cap in April, that there was going to be a budget cap, that's when Ferrari was talking about, oh, well, to keep these people employed, we'll Indy cars.
Mm-hmm.
So, they had been talking for about a year, but the problem is, like, a full calendar year puts them into April, so that's a month before um, the Indianapolis events.
Mm-hmm.
So they could, in theory, show up to the Indy 500,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't see them racing anything before that. They might try and um, do some testing or stuff like that, but yeah,
You just think it'll be, yeah, that makes sense.
it's too short of a time frame. Like, especially because they would be starting from scratch, so they would have to design an engine, and their aero package. Which, the nice thing about IndyCar is it's a spec chassis. So the chassis is built by Dallara, and pretty much the aero is spec as well. So they don't have to put the resources into that. They would basically just have to build an engine,
Mm-hmm.
and that would allow them, in theory, to do a crash course and put it into a year.
Hmm.
Because they're really only focusing on one thing. The problem is they don't have any drivers in their system that know how to drive an IndyCar.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of drivers in the Ferrari system, Nikita Mazepin, who, as of we're recording this, is still a Haas driver, uh, posted on his Instagram story him riding with somebody, and just groping the lady in the back seat.
Oh,
Yeah. And yeah, so he reminds everyone that he a douche.
that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. Haas has said that they are going to handle this internally. there's no way he gets fired because he is the money that he is bringing to the team is probably the only thing keeping the team afloat. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's not a great look.
No.
What is a great look though was Fernando Alonso, who will be late 30s, maybe early 40s, having to participate in the young driver test at the end of the year this year to get ready for next year. So the young driver test is something that basically any team that is having a rookie driver,
Hmm.
quote unquote rookie driver, for the next year, they run this after the last race. And basically, what this is it's an extra couple practice sessions to make sure they know how to handle the car and they know how to because these are the fastest cars in the world for the racing that they do. So the jump from F2 to F1 is such a massive jump that it's this idea. The idea behind this is like, okay, the teams can see what they need to work on in the off season,
Hmm.
and so this is normally, you know, 18, 19, 20-year olds have Fernando Alonso, a two-time world champion in the young
Hmm.
because he was away long enough that his status lapsed. He was gone for 3 years, I think it was. Yeah. They actually did a pretty cool thing Renault did where they brought the actual car that he won the 2005 World Championship. They brought that to Dubai and he drove that around the track with I believe it was Ocon driving the modern Renault. So it's kind of this cool like acknowledging what Alonso did for the team. You don't normally see that kind of stuff. Like you'll see tributes, but normally it's after the driver's retired, not you know tributing the driver
Yeah, that
during
that
his
is.
career.
Yeah, it's the retiring or he's dead. It's never the like. Let's look back to your last 5 years. You still have more ahead. Don't worry. We're just looking back.
I mean, obviously, it's this is kind of a unique situation in which you know, he started at Renault, won his back-to-back titles in '05 and '06.
Hmm.
He burnt anytime Alonso leaves a team, he basically burns the bridge behind him.
Hmm.
Went to Ferrari, didn't do great there. Went to McLaren,
Didn't do great there.
didn't do great there because that was the collapse of McLaren.
Hmm.
And then he left McLaren and went. He ran the Indy 500 a couple of years. He did Le Mans. He did Dakar. He did a bunch of stuff
Hmm.
in his time away from. So kind of the way that Renault has welcomed him back. Obviously, it's been 14 years since he won his title, and I think 13 years since he left. So basically, everybody that was there at Renault is gone,
Hmm.
and it's a new crowd. So yeah, the fact that they're tributing to him kind of coming back is interesting, but it was cool to see.
Okay.
Um, it looks like Mercedes is going to be dominant for the next 3 years. Uh,
Isn't that just
because
their way? Mercedes is supposed to be the dominant one, I thought.
yeah, well, this Toto Wolff signed a 3 deal to stay at Mercedes as the team principal. This basically cements that Mercedes is going to be the number 1 or the number 2 team for next year.
Okay.
It will be Eve, maybe short of like back in the 50s or 60s, the longest stretch of a dominant team in F1.
Really?
Yeah, because you could potentially see Mercedes winning 10 straight constructors.
Okay.
The closest would have been, trying to think, like Ferrari in the late 90s, early 2000s when they had Schumacher.
Hmm.
I think they won 5 or 6 constructors titles in a row. So Mercedes already broke that record,
Right.
but this could just cement them as
The king.
the king of F1. We'll get to it later during the races, but Sergio Perez adopted a NASCAR style for these last 4 races, in the fact that he went wreckers or checkers.
Hmm.
So he either podiumed or his car blew up.
Hmm.
So it's kind of interesting to see because you don't normally see this happen to a driver. Like, you'll see him lose an engine or something like that, but not basically, such a either highest of highs or lowest of lows for this long. At least in the modern era. I mean, in the 80s and 90s when they were running 1400 horsepower and the engines were basically built to run one race.
Hmm.
It wasn't too surprising to see a car just grenade an engine halfway through.
Hmm.
But yeah. Speaking of Perez, he was the final piece in the puzzle for silly season, driver silly season. He signed with Red Bull. It's a 1-year deal, so this opens the seat up next year. I guess technically it's not wrapped up because Hamilton still isn't announced as driving for Mercedes, but that's a done deal. So the changes we have are Carlos Sainz goes into Sebastian Vettel's seat at Ferrari.
Hmm.
Daniel Ricciardo moves from Renault to McLaren to fill Sainz's seat. Alonso fills Ricciardo's seat. Vettel leaves Ferrari for Racing Point, Aston Martin. They're going to be called Aston Martin.
Right, I remember we talked about that, I think, 2
Yeah.
episodes ago.
Filling the seat that Perez had, which it must have been terrible for him. He knew he was out when the season started. Like, when they started the season back up, Sergio Perez knew that he was done, that Vettel was coming in next year, and his seat was up.
Hmm.
So Perez goes to Red Bull. Albon loses his seat at Red Bull. Daniel Kvyat gets released from his contract at AlphaTauri.
Hmm.
And oh man, I see the guy's name.
Oh no. Some absurd name that AJ's gonna butcher, I feel like.
I'll probably butcher it, but he is a very impressive F2 driver. Name.
Esteban Julio Ricardo Brera.
No. Japanese driver. I have the story saved, but there's been so much news that the Formula One. I want to say Sedona, maybe. Um, um, yeah. So, yeah. So, okay, it's Tsunoda. How would you say that?
What was it? Say it one more time.
Sonoda? I guess Tsunoda.
Yeah, probably because I assume the T silent.
Yeah. Sonoda, Yuki Sonoda. Um, he finished third in the F2 championship this past year, and he was a rookie, so he was very impressive because that F2 series is really difficult unless you're just a stud driver to do well in as a rookie because it's kind of it's the waiting ground for seats to open up in F1. So if you've been in F2 for a year or two, you're just gonna dominate. Yeah, so he will be at AlphaTauri. He's the first Japanese driver in excuse me, 2014 was when Kamui Kobayashi was the
Wow.
um, last Japanese driver. And there's always been a history of Japanese drivers. Normally, it isn't very good because a lot of pay drivers. So, especially in the 80s and 90s when Japan was having economic boom, there were a lot of Japanese in F1 that had all kinds of money behind them. But Kamui Kobayashi now drives for Toyota prototype, whatever they're going to be called this year. So, yeah. And the Yuki Tsunoda looks like the real deal. So he'll be an interesting one to watch. And then the last team is Haas. Well, I guess we have Haas and Williams. Haas has Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin. Mick being the son of Michael Schumacher.
What about Joel Schumacher? Is he related?
No.
But he's not Batman?
Oh. Joel Schumacher. Racing Schumacher. And then Williams is Sol. Why can't I think of it?
I have no clue. Pew pew.
Canadian. Why can't Latifi. Nicholas Latifi.
Latifi.
Williams. We will get to it more during the races, but Hamilton tested positive after the first Bahrain race, I believe it was.
Okay.
And made his quote-unquote recovery just before the Abu Dhabi race, but he looked just whipped.
Really?
The entire time, yeah. So he may have he may have tested negative and have no major symptoms.
But he could visibly have symptoms.
But he is visibly just exhausted, and he is normally Hamilton's one of the best conditioned drivers.
Okay.
So for him to be just exhausted, after every time he gets out of the car is not a good sign.
Yeah, I agree.
And another thing that we will get to in the races, and to end the news on a good note, Roman Grosjean fully recovered from his surgeries on his hands.
Hmm.
So that is very good. We will get to why he needed that.
Nice.
But first, we have Istanbul Park. First time since, I believe it was 2008 that they ran. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Probably not a great track to have run this year because apparently they resurfaced it, or they finished resurfacing it like a week and a half before F1 rolled into town.
Oh, wow.
So the entire weekend was terrible for the drivers. When you resurface a track like this, it is incredibly slick
Mm-hmm.
because it is just straight tarmac. Now, for people that don't know how a track works, like, you're probably thinking, oh, well, you want a clean surface. No, what you want is a rubbered in surface. So, if you've ever seen, like, asphalt or tarmac, basically anything that isn't concrete as a road surface, you'll know it's got dips in it and, pockets and stuff like that. Which is great for, like, normal roads because it drains really well.
Mm-hmm.
But it's terrible for a racetrack
Oh, I could see that.
because you basically want a smooth surface. Concrete is just way too expensive to do for tracks. So it's one of the reasons why you don't see a ton of concrete tracks.
Right.
So the asphalt, obviously, the pits means there's less surface for the tire to contact.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes it super slick. So what you want is those divots to be filled in with the rubber off the tires.
Mm-hmm.
And then rubber on rubber is actually super, super sticky. So you want to follow where the rubber is, and then you'll be faster. Obviously, the problem is when you have a fresh track, there's no rubber on it, so it's basically an ice rink out there with these cars. You will see this too, like, in the States, obviously, we have NASCAR. So what they'll do, like, after it rains,
Mm-hmm.
they have basically this thing that goes onto the back of a truck that's just like 5 or 6 tires, old tires, and they just run that, and they'll run laps just to get something onto the surface.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's difficult to do that on a circuit because it's just, I mean,
It just is.
the logistics of that is crazy. And it didn't help that it was raining a couple of the days.
Mm-hmm.
So mix a track that's already an ice rink, and then throw water on it. You're not going to have a very good time.
No.
Surprisingly, though, the Racing Points really stood out during the wet. That car is just like, it's, as I say, like wreckers or checkers. Like, this has been their entire season. Not necessarily the wreckers part, but they've either been amazing and running for podiums, or they've been running at the back. It's just like they can't figure out, when that car is on, it's the best of the rest.
Mm-hmm.
But when they can't, that car's running with Ferrari and the lower end of, like, the Renaults, or if McLaren's having a bad day. Yeah, and speaking of Ferrari just had a terrible day. qualifying especially. So they had a wet qualifying, and then it had rained before the race started, but it had cleared up by the time the race started.
Mhm.
So there was a lot of water on the track, but there wasn't going to be any added.
Oh.
See, the skies were quote unquote clear. It was pretty gray. Bottas just had a terrible race day, though. He was spinning like nobody's business.
Mhm.
Um, after this race, he probably should have gone and tried to get a job as a DJ, because that's the only job where spinning is.
How long have you been holding that joke in for?
Approximately 30 seconds.
Okay. I was really hoping you'd be like, for 2 weeks?
I just came up with that one. Hamilton used a very impressive tire strategy and just his luck to win the race and to clinch his 7th title.
Mm-hmm.
So the race before Turkey, it basically eliminated everybody but Bottas. Bottas needed to win this race to push it another race. But he, in his Finnish DJ-ness, obviously put him out of that. Perez and Vettel round out the podium. Vettel gets driver of the day because anytime he does anything impressive in that Ferrari, I think it stands out, because that car is just incredibly bad. So it's very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
That rounds out Istanbul Park. We go from there to the first of 2 Bahrain races. This is the race with the full. Yeah, this is the GP track. Normal track if you had been watching F1 before. So even though Mercedes and Hamilton had clinched their titles, there were still a ton of battles. Like, Red Bull could have potentially lost second. Third place in the constructors was still up for grabs. Verstappen had basically clinched third in the drivers. You know, there were a lot of battles, and obviously the battle at the bottom for, if you could get a point. I think Haas only had 2 at the time. So if Williams could get a couple points here at the end and leapfrog Haas, like, that is a massive, it's millions of dollars that they would stand to win. The problem with Bahrain, especially when you run it late in the season,
Mm-hmm.
is it's windy late in the year.
Okay.
So basically this track is, Bahrain's a desert to begin with, but this track is like in the middle of the desert.
Okay.
So it's just sand all over.
Oh.
So you get the sand blowing onto the track.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously they try to keep it as clean as possible. But, when you have 15-mile-an-hour winds and the only thing around you is sand,
Mm-hmm.
sand is going to get on the track. Renault appeared to have found their pace for this race. They qualify 6th and 7th. So, obviously the top 4, right, are Mercedes, Red Bull, and then you had, I believe, McLaren, one of the Racing Points in there. And then Renault are 6th and 7th. Like, they're a team that they weren't expected to qualify this high at all this year. So race starts, and we have a hell of a first lap. uh, going on to the back straight, Grosjean gets run into and crashes into a fireball.
Mm-hmm.
Is the
Oh wow.
easiest way to describe what happens. Basically, he went straight through the barrier, and the car split in half and blew up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Again, I feel like every time we see a crash this year, we have to thank the Halo. In this situation, the Halo saved a life. Like, I thought if the Halo wasn't there, this is Jules Bianchi, Japan 2014. This is the driver being decapitated in the cockpit.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, Jules Bianchi's mom, I believe it was, reached out to Roman and was like, it sucks that my son had to die to get this safety shit started.
Mm-hmm.
But it's great to see, it's great to see a family not have to do what.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there were some crazy quotes from Grosjean of like, he saw death coming.
Oh whoa.
Like, yeah. Um, this is why I said it's very impressive he fully recovered from his surgeries. Both of his hands were burned, and he basically destroyed his one ankle.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the fire for over 20 seconds. Somebody timed it. Which most people would assume means death anyway. But this year, in fact, the FIA upped the fire suit from 10 seconds to 20 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So that definitely saved his life. Because the gloves were still 10-second rated, and the disaster, what the fire did to his hands, that would have been his entire body. Probably wouldn't have. Just to add to the craziness that was the first lap here, Stroll ends up upside down in the middle of the track. Like, his car flipped over, and he's on the airbox. Like, he crashed, but it's like, you couldn't write this. Like, you couldn't write a car going up in a fireball and a car ending up upside down on the track. Like, you might have one or the other, but you wouldn't have both. The race got red flagged, obviously. And the interesting thing when they red flag a race is, obviously the cameras have mics on them, so you can hear the drivers talking to their team. And especially Kevin Magnussen talking to the guys at Haas, like, the relief when the news started to go through the paddock that Grosjean was safe. There were a lot of guys that were walking on eggshells before that. Because I'm sure a lot of the drivers thought that, a driver had just died.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not from the crash, because obviously with the halo in place, he should have survived that. But the fire, like, the car, and I mean, it was a movie explosion. Like, it was that,
Like Tenet level explosion when they go in the airport.
yeah. Like, this was, if Hollywood was gonna make an explosion, that's what this would have looked like. And yeah, so a lot of these drivers were like, okay, did we just see a guy burned to death? The kind of a cool story to come out of this, though, was the two firefighters that ran in and saved Roman.
Mm-hmm.
they apparently got a massive promotion
Mm.
straight from the royal family.
Wow.
The prince or whoever. I know
So
it's obviously an Islamic country, so it's whatever.
it's a prince. I think it's prince.
I
So
believe a prince runs it. I don't know if there's a king.
I that's yeah. I thought it was all princes. I don't know enough to be positive, but I thought it was something
Yeah.
weird where it wasn't a king.
But it's a royal family. So the news got out that they got a massive promotion, but it wasn't clear necessarily what level they went to.
Okay.
Um, was this just like, oh, you are now like fire chiefs, or are they like gonna work directly with the royal family sort of promotion?
But
Um, so yeah. Red Bull ended up with 2 podium spots as Perez blows an engine.
of course,
This is gonna be a
trend.
running factor, yeah. A trend in the notes here. But we get to probably the most interesting race this year,
Sakir.
which is saying a lot. So, the Sakir Grand Prix, which is the outer layout of Bahrain.
Okay.
There are like 7 total turns or something like that. This is the one that I said is basically like an oval.
Mm-hmm.
It's as close as F1 has gotten since they ran at Indianapolis, that they've run on an oval. This is both the most laps and the fastest laps since F1 ran at Adelaide in the 80s. So, yeah, it was like 87 laps or something like that. Like, it felt like an IndyCar race.
Mm-hmm.
This was the race that Hamilton was out with COVID, so that shakes up the grid a lot. Russell moves from Williams to Mercedes, which a lot of people were wondering why Stoffel Van Dorn, who was the reserve driver for Mercedes,
Mm-hmm.
they were wondering why he didn't get the drive. The only thing I can guess is that Russell was already in the protocol system,
Mm-hmm.
so they could trace him and all that, and so Van Dorn would have had to quarantine for however many days. Jack Aitken moved to Russell's open seat in the Williams. The reason he could do that is because he was running F2, and F2 happened to be in Bahrain, so he was there. Lap 1, we get another crash. This time, Leclerc is trying to avoid Ocon and kind of puts Perez in a terrible situation. He runs into him, and Leclerc goes off into the gravel. Verstappen, trying to avoid the crash, ends up in the gravel. So Leclerc and Verstappen are both out lap 1, and Perez has a puncture and some aero damage. As I say, the lap count's super high. It's 87 laps. But it's a lot like a NASCAR race. So they're doing laps at 50 some odd seconds. So if you're Perez, there's not a lot of time to make up the ground that you lost. You're potentially going to be a lap or 2 down.
Mm-hmm.
By the time which he got lucky they called a yellow because they needed to get the cars out of the gravel, but if they hadn't called a yellow, he would have had to have limped back to the pits and probably a 40 to 50 second stop to replace the wing and make sure, nothing else was busted and all that. So that's already a lap there. So he lucked out a lot during this race. Russell is making the Mercedes look just unbeatable.
So like normal?
So like normal. But the thing of it is, his drive in this race kind of diminished the accomplishments of Lewis Hamilton.
Okay.
because the fact that a guy driving arguably the worst car, potentially the second worst car.
At least second worst, not worst.
Yeah, the Haas is probably the worst car of the track. The fact that he could go from that car to hopping into this Mercedes, qualifying second, nearly getting pole, and he had 0 seat time in this car.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, Russell is, I believe, if not the tallest, the second tallest driver on the grid. He was wearing shoes that were a size and a half too small.
Really?
To fit into this car. Like, he shouldn't have been able to drive this good. But the fact that he was able to do this and, lead the race, like he was out in front for a while. Like, obviously Hamilton, all credit to him for winning 7 titles, but maybe this Mercedes is just so dominant that you could put anybody in there and they would win. So that's pretty much proof to that. Aitken proves that the Williams is a handful. He got very lucky.
Really?
Yeah. He spun his car out on the last turn, and the only thing that hit was his front wing.
Oh, wow.
He was looking like he was going to run into the barrier, basically, and T-bone it. But he got super lucky and spun out towards the track, and it just knocked his front wing off, but it basically spread a bunch of debris, because when you do that, it obviously shatters the carbon supports that are holding the wing, and probably shatters some of the carbon, and so there was debris all over the track. This is where Mercedes apparently just has a massive brain fart. So they double stack their cars, which means they both pit at the same time. And if you do this right, it's a thing of beauty. If you do it wrong, like Mercedes did,
it's not.
You ruin a race. You ruin 2 races, really. So they end up putting, I believe it was 3 mediums and a hard on Russell, and they took Bottas's tires off and then put them back on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there is a massive penalty to the team, especially if a driver runs with mixed tires, which they correct the next lap. But Bottas is out there with like 30 lap old hards, and there's like 30 laps to go.
Well.
So he's not in a good position at all to get any result in this race.
Mm-hmm.
Lance Stroll nearly took out, I believe it was 2 or 3 cars behind the safety car, going into the second to last turn, because everybody was slowing down as the safety car was going for the turn, and Lance was like just cruising down the back straight and locks it up, and nearly takes out a couple cars. So kind of a brain fart on his part, but also like this is a new track layout, and so you don't know necessarily how the safety car is going to drive it. So, I'd say 80-20 his fault. Perez keeps the competition at bay. He ends up winning the race. Russell picked up a puncture at some point, and he was in, I believe it was 4th at the time when they said that, and so he obviously had to come in to change his tires, and he ended up like 8th or 9th. He picked up a couple points for himself and the team, but on a day where it looked like he was potentially going to get his first win everything went wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and none of it was really his fault. Like, the puncture was debris from potentially Aitken. You know, the reason he was behind everybody was Mercedes failing a pit stop. Like, you know, his career has been tough to watch as is because he is extremely talented. And then the one shot he gets at driving the best car on the grid, and he's doing great. And then everything goes wrong. And it's just like, oh, this is what it was like to watch Leclerc in the Ferrari last year. Like, Leclerc will win championships.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I don't think at Ferrari. And that leads us into the final race, Abu Dhabi. There are exactly 5 notes for this race.
Oh.
Mainly because of the second point. But Max gets pulled. Norris pulls out a lap out of his ass. Gets P4. So it goes Max, the 2 Mercedes, then a McLaren. This is the ultimate snooze fest of a track because there's basically no overtaking. In fact, from the starting grid to the finishing, I believe there were only 3 places there. The top 3 stay in order. Max wins, Bottas gets second, Hamilton gets third. As I say, Hamilton looked exhausted after this race. Verstappen, that makes him the youngest to 10 wins in a career.
Okay.
Very impressive. Vettel continues his tradition of singing to Ferrari at the end of the season. And sings a nice little diddle to the team as his time there comes to an end. And we are on to 21.
Woo, woo, woo.
The cars minus the McLaren are basically going to be identical for next year.
So, also, correct me if I'm wrong, for an ending this season, it just feels anticlimactic.
Yes, ever since they started racing at Dubai as the season finale, it has been like, okay, you know, short of somebody crashing, how they qualify is how this race is going to end.
Right, and that's kind of like, it's like, I understand it's the final race and probably on TV it's a little more, but like it doesn't feel like it's not like a thing, it's not like a kid, like obviously football, like no one questions, was the Super Bowl anticlimactic? It's a very known thing, or World Series, like this feels very much like another race.
Yeah. Yeah, there's 0 climax. Especially when normally the title's already decided, so this race means nothing.
Right, especially if you're out of the point, like short of getting last, like, or the times even the end, like, you're like, I have enough points, doesn't matter.
Yeah. The ultimate example of this being just like a wet fart to end the season was in 2016. Nico Rosberg won the title, but it came down to this final race. But basically, I believe Rosberg had to finish like top 3, and he would win the title. Hamilton was out in front and just slowed everybody down. And it was like, well, if I can't win the title, I'm going to potentially make Rosberg lose it by backing everybody up, by basically running as slow as he could. So, yeah.
So how excited are you for next year, which in theory, there's a chance, based on vaccines and everything too, could have fans and numbers, could have like semi more normal season?
I'm just excited to see just how much the way that silly season happened, and how many seats changed. That's going to be the cool part.
That's like the big thing.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch McLaren because, as I say, every car is going to stay more or less identical. McLaren is switching to Mercedes engines. That was already planned. So they got a waiver to do that. But they froze development. So the 21 cars will be the 2020 cars.
Okay.
Um, so you could potentially see McLaren racing for podiums, which would be great to see. But yeah, I think that that middle stretch. So, Monaco, Canada, France, like that's when you'll probably start seeing fans.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if they decide to do fans at all this year, or for 21.
Right.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that rolls out. It's funny because next year the storylines are going to be basically off track storyline.
Mm-hmm.
It's drivers at new teams. It's are fans going to be allowed? I guess the one storyline is going to be McLaren on the track. Like that's the only one. So, yeah, we stand to see some interesting things happen next
And on that note, I guess that does it for this season of Yield F1.
year. Yeah, Formula S. I'm glad though that we have a show that's a seasonal show that we don't have
Yeah,
to figure something out in the off.
that's true. Is it gonna be next year? We're gonna call it Formula Series S.
No,
Can we call it the Formula S 360?
no, we'll come up with some I don't know. All these cars have like code names, chassis names, so we'll come up with some creep.
Nice. Yeah. Well, it's a very interesting journey down a world that I had no clue about. Still don't fully understand. Of the cars, the big engines, and explosions.
They're pretty small engines actually.
Okay, fast engines.
I think they're 1.6 sixes.
Okay.
I think that's what they would.
Whoop. Bam. I guess that'll do it for us here. I think this episode's gonna show up on Christmas Day, so Merry Christmas to all you beautiful bastards. Is that how we say it here?
Sure. I hope you got to see the winter solstice. What is it? Jupiter and Saturn.
Oh yeah, I think that's tonight.
Monday was supposed to be.
Monday. Okay. So yeah. Hopefully people check that out. I tried to see the Northern Lights. That didn't end well. Yeah.
That didn't end well. Okay, we gotta talk about
We went up an hour and a half into like northern Minnesota, and like apparently we saw the news article that morning that said, yeah, never mind, Minnesota doesn't get to see it anymore. But we saw it once we got up there.
Nice.
So that was like 4 hours of not getting back.
Yeah.
And then it was funny because we saw a bar that was very obviously open when they're not supposed to be in Minnesota. And then 2 days ago, the governor revoked some liquor license, including the bar that we saw.
Yep. That's what happened in Michigan.
So yeah. But yeah, I guess that will do it for us here. AJ, I will be talking to you, I guess, next week because we have more shows to do at the end of the year. But again, Merry Christmas, and we'll be back with F1 stuff. I guess, is it summer-ish normally? Spring?
Well, it'll be March.
March.
If
So
if the season starts normally, it's March.
Okay then. So, have a Merry Christmas, everyone, and see you next time.
This episode is partially brought to you by the Humble Choice program. Did you know Humble Bundle has a great monthly subscription service that lets you get a ton of video games every single month? That's right, from plans range from $5 to $20 a month, you get a hold of a bunch of free games they have available to you. And you can use our code down in the description below to go and sign up. It would help our podcast and help you see what great games are available for you this month.
This podcast was a production of the SWW Show. To learn more, go to theswwshow.com.
Remember, you can follow the show on Twitter at the SWW Show. You can follow me at Mikey_Maroney. You can follow AJ at LowSeatBoy. Remember, new episodes premiere on Friday, 9 a.m. Central Time on anchor.fm/SWW and podcast services around the globe.